Nigerian Governors Forum is concerned about the worsening security situation across the country. In a statement, the chairman of the forum and Ekiti State Governor, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, said the worsening security situation in the country, in spite of all efforts of government to end it, is simply disturbing. The governors also expressed solidarity with Governor Babagana Zulum and the people of Borno State following the attack on the governor's convoy by gunmen suspected to be members of the Boko Haram sect. The governor described the attack as one unwarranted attack too many, which epitomizes a collective vulnerability and fragility of the country's security architecture. The Forum Subcommittee on Security will meet today, after which they will meet with President Buhari and heads of security agencies. Very important meeting it will be. What's your take on it?
Well, we would have been worried if the governors were not worried over the insecurity challenges we are witnessing. And it is good that they are meeting the president. After all, he's the CNC. But there are two critical questions I would suppose that the governors bring up when they meet the president and also the service chiefs. And there are questions bordering around what Governor of Borno State, Governor Zulum, raised recently. One, the issue of sabotage. And two, it will seem as if the president does not know the whole truth, because he says the president needs to know the truth. So, I mean, it's indicative that the president has not been told the whole truth. If the governors do not bring up these two critical questions in that meeting, and not just bring it up, but demand genuine answers, then it would have been a waste of time of not just themselves, but everybody, and status quo will remain the same. So we would like to see that this would not just be another meeting between the governors and the president.
Valid point made.
Well, I think it's important that this morning we'll be talking to a security expert, Dr. Ona Ehumo, who has spent the last 10, 15 years studying the security situation in the country and who has the relevant credentials. And it's just coincidental that on the same day, the Nigeria Governors Forum will be meeting with the President of Nigeria to discuss the security situation in the country. Now, on Sunday, the Governors Forum met with the governor of Borno State, who was attacked in Baga, a community in the northeastern part of the country, and who barely escaped with his life. He was not the only person that was attacked. In the process, a police officer was injured. Men of the Civilian Joint Task Force, who were also around the place at the time, were also attacked. And the governor had gone ahead to say that, look, this is a case of sabotage. And he pointedly accused the military of sabotaging the security situation in the country. Now, that's a very serious allegation.
Yes.
If the military and other law enforcement agencies that are supposed to ensure security in the country are the ones now being accused by the governor of a state who barely escaped with his life, has been behind some of the attacks that we have witnessed in the the troubled northeastern part of Nigeria, then that's a serious allegation. It provides a serious ground for the governors of Nigeria to meet with the president and to ask him pointedly what is going on. This is important in the context of the fact that the Nigerian military has been saying that they are doing a good job. They've been able to decimate the Boko Haram, and and the president himself echoing that line. Only the other day told us that his government is doing the very best with regard to security in Nigeria. I hope that when that meeting holds today, that the governors themselves will be confident. They will not be intimidated. They will not be overawed by the monarchical importance of the president of Nigeria, to tell him the truth and say, Mr. President, we don't look like we're doing well with this issue of security. And it's not just for them to go to the president to complain. They must have specific recommendations. Now, in the story that is out there in the public domain, we do not know what their recommendations are for now. Now, what will those recommendations be? Would they align with Nigerians who are saying that the service chiefs have, outlived their relevance and overstayed their welcome, and should therefore be replaced, so that we can have new thinking, so that we can have new ideas, so that we can have new strategies? Now, or would they recommend to the president that, look, there are issues already signposted in the National Security Strategy that was announced and advertised last year, and that many months later, no step will seem to have been taken to address some of those recommendations in that National Security Strategy, particularly with regard to the welfare of the troops, the rank and file, who are now saying that they have lost interest in the war, and 256 of them have already resigned to say that, look, we don't think that Nigeria is serious enough. Would they also be saying to the president that the idea of de-radicalization, demobilization, and reintegration of graduate terrorists, is not an idea that Nigerians like, and that this is something that the widows of the people who have died on behalf of Nigeria, who have fought on behalf of Nigeria to keep Nigerians safe, is something that the government should recommend, should look into. So I don't want this meeting, as useful as it may be, to end up as just a rank-a-day opportunity for Nigerian governors. When they meet the president, they must be confident enough to put the issues on the table, and they must be aware that the Nigerian people will be watching. And we too here will be keeping an eye on what happens.
You have just set the agenda for what the meeting should be. I mean, those are the issues, and those are the topical issues. But let's quickly move to the next story. Air Peace has sacked over 70 pilots across its fleet as the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic continues to take a huge toll on its operations. The airline said it had to take the painful but rightful decision in the face of devastating effects of COVID-19 pandemic on its operation and financial health. He said the layoff became imperative because he could not afford to continue to fulfill its financial obligations without carrying out a restructuring of its entire operations to survive the times. And that's why I thought they gave them a bailout, because this is shocking for the aviation industry. This is a barometer.
You would question to what extent the bailout, fixes the problem in the aviation industry. As we all know, this is one of the most hit sectors globally, not just in Nigeria. Yes. Many airlines are cutting jobs wherever you look. But interestingly, I was looking at an article that says in Asia, the airlines are not cutting those jobs as we're seeing elsewhere in the world. They are instead looking at perhaps unpaid leave, and then you have a lot of government intervention. So many airlines in Asia are yet to announce any job cuts. But when you look at Europe, the Americas, you see those job cuts. In Nigeria, unfortunately, we're seeing these job cuts. And indeed, it's something that we need to look into. What is that bailout doing? What is he addressing? On the continent, I noticed that Ethiopia Airways is holding off in those job cuts. But in South Africa, where they have a struggling state-owned airline as well, they are cutting jobs. So it's inevitable, I think, but perhaps we can cushion the effects.
Well, this is not surprising. I mean, airlines all over the world have either had to rationalize their routes or to follow staff, or to even ground some of their fleet, as British Airways has had to do with, Boeing 747. The truth of the matter is that the travel and tourism industry has been one of the most impacted industries on account of COVID-19. And it's not just Air Peace. Before now, Arik Air also had to make some announcements. But that bailout that the Nigerian government promised has not happened. We hope that it will happen and that the details will be favorable.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all our headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we have Rotus, Michael, and Aaron to discuss business, COVID-19, and global business.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our ever-dependable Rotus Odiri is here right now to give us Africa Business Update. Good morning, Rotus.
Morning, Doctor. Good morning, Adeso, and good morning, Rufai. We kick things off with the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index for July. The Statistics Department of the Central Bank conducts these monthly surveys where they talk to manufacturers and ask them how things are going, production levels, employment, and so on and so forth. So the key thing to note here, you see the green line. For the month of July, we're at 44.9. So there's a threshold, a 50-point threshold, which is the dotted red line that's going across the chart. If you are above 50, you are expanding. If you are below 50, you are contracting. You can see through June of 2019 all the way through to February of, or maybe even March of 2020, we're above the 50-point line. There was expansion in manufacturing. However, since the lockdown period, it has fallen, which is probably not a good sign for our second quarter GDP when that comes out. But if you can see there from from June, the green line has been climbing. So we've been at just above 40 points for June. We're climbing back up now at 44.9. So hopefully, as the lockdown continues to ease and there's more activity, we'll hopefully see that climb back up to the 50-point threshold and also go above. But that's where things are right now as far as manufacturing activity. And once again, it is a survey that is conducted by the Statistics Department of the Central Bank, talking to manufacturers to see how things are. We move to the really, the big news that dominated yesterday was ShopRite divesting from, or is signaling that they intend to divest their holdings from Nigeria. Now, there's some factors to consider with regards to what they were looking at is that, well, at least this is what I'm considering the reasons behind them wanting to exit their majority stake in Nigeria. One is competition from indigenous supermarkets and also non-indigenous as well. In my area of town, I live in Shangotedo, Lekki, which I consider the mainland of the island. Really, way out there, there's a whole number of indigenous supermarkets that have popped up next to the ShopRite that I'm close to. The ShopRite I'm close to is within driving distance, but there are other supermarkets that are within walking distance, and these are Nigerian-owned supermarkets, so there's more competition. Also, there's the fact that there's more online shopping being done. This is growing. It's not that big where everybody is shopping online for groceries, but there are a number of people who are now getting their groceries delivered to them. ShopRite depends on foot traffic. They're in shopping malls, so they require people to actually go in groups and to go and buy what they need. There's also the operating environment, foreign exchange challenges and being able to repatriate funds out of the country, and also issues with supply chain disruptions as well. That's also affected them. And then there was, of course, some legal issues. There was a judgment that was upheld back in May from AIC, a company, AIC Limited, that said that ShopRite had reneged on an agreement, a joint venture agreement, in order to open up a Nigerian arm of a joint business that they had put together. This was about to the tune of about $10 million. They appealed it, and the appeals courts upheld it back in May. So if you combine all these things, you might want to make the case for them wanting to consider selling their stake. But just to clarify for people, they're not closing shop and leaving Nigeria. Whoever the investor is that comes in, that essentially buys this majority stake that they're looking to shop around, will continue operations, based on how they see fit. But remember, when they put out their trading announcement, they said, 1, we're getting offers from investors. 2, we're reevaluating our operating model in Nigeria. So we'll see how that goes. So Choppies, this is almost pretty much the same thing. Choppies is a Botswana-based supermarket chain. They operate across 8 supermarkets, across 8 African countries. They also made an announcement yesterday that they are going to be exiting some of those African markets. So Choppies is based in Botswana's capital of Gaborone. They have 250 stores across 8 African countries. Those countries, of course, are Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Namibia. They said they're going to cease operations in South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique due to low profitability. The company plans to focus on opening more stores in Botswana and exploring other markets. Interestingly enough, their stock was also suspended on the Botswana and South African Stock Exchange because they were not filing their reports on time. So they were suspended back in 2018. They only just were allowed to start trading again. And then finally, our last story that we're looking to is a deal that's been announced between Custodian Investment PLC and UAC of Nigeria PLC. What happens here is that Custodian Investment PLC is going to be taking a 51% stake in UPCC, which is UACN Property Development Company. You can see there they're taking about 9.4 billion shares, which represents a 51% stake that UAC AC of Nigeria currently holds in UPDC, which is their real estate arm. The shares are going meant to be sold in 2 tranches, and the deal paves the way for Custodian to enter the real estate market. So UPDC, UAC Property Development Company, is a property development company that plays in the real estate market. So here's the thing. Just to double back to ShopRite, whenever ShopRite's deal is concluded, whoever is buying into it, this is how we're going to announce it. So this is the form it will take. Whatever new investor is coming in and buying whatever stake in ShopRite, we will announce it in this way, state how the deal is going to be broken down and exactly how it's going to work out. Well, so that's our African business update.
Yes, Rotus, quickly, a quick comment on ShopRite. Yesterday there was a lot of anxiety among the consumer community in Nigeria when we were told that ShopRite was going to shut down. But as of this morning, with your report, there is now clarification because ShopRite is a big player, in that consumer space. But do we have any information about the likely buyer? Because we're told that a buyer is already in line and that the book value of ShopRite in Nigeria is about 25 billion naira.
Right.
And then what are the purchase considerations? Do we have information in that regard? And then out of all the reasons that you have listed, from legal to operating environment and profitability, I was expecting that perhaps the COVID-19 season will probably be one of the impacting factors for ShopRite to take a second look at its operating model in Nigeria, or is that not part of it at all?
It certainly is. If you consider, and that is couched into the operating environment. I mentioned the supply chain disruptions that they've faced. COVID-19 can be attributed to that, but for them to shut down or rather exit because of COVID-19 would be a bridge too far. So it's a hit that they had to take along with all other players in the sector. So the buyers, there's been some speculation as to who the buyers are. One of them is a Nigerian in the property development space, but again, the details are a bit sketchy right now. Or another is another South African company. So there's speculation as to who they are, but they've narrowed them down to 3 of them. Not too sure. I don't have much details on what the deal will entail, but that's what's being floated around right now. So we should hear something.
Then you don't want to disclose the identity of those. The short list of 3.
Right, I'm not too sure. It's speculation, so I don't want to mention any names.
Rotus, permit me, I mean, you said you don't know the details of this purchasing agreement, but what does this mean for the over 2,000 Nigerians employed by this supermarket chain in their over 8 stores across the country? Or 25 stores across the country.
26,
8 states.
actually.
8 states.
Yeah, so that was my initial concern when I first heard this before drilling down, would they be losing their job?
Yes.
So again, it's just an ownership stake. So operations are still going to continue. ShopRite has been here for 15 years. So, so you can look at it as them cashing out on their majority stake. But for the jobs, again, as you've mentioned, over 99% of the employees are Nigerian. Those are, as of now, I don't know what new decisions will be made by whatever new management takes over. But as of now, it is expected that things will continue the way they are, and those employees will keep their jobs.
Would the local competitors gain any advantage? Ebiano, Spar, and some of the other local
Spar is not a local competitor. Spar isn't a local competitor. It's an international brand.
Well, but they are competitors.
Yeah, yes. Spar, I think Spar is Dutch. But they've been... I don't know if you saw the tweet from Spar. Spar sent out a tweet saying we're still with you, and they flexed their muscle or something. So they are, because that's part of the reason why the competition aspect of this is notable with regards to that. So they are growing. Competition is fierce as far as the supermarket space is concerned, and yes, they are expected to pick off, with regards to what's going on right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Rotus. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Let's go to London. Yes, let's go to London, where Michael Wilson is standing by. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. China stocks up, first of all, on Tuesday. Strong gains in banks and so on. The Chinese authorities have extended the grace period, as they put it, for implementation of various asset management rules to the end of 2021. So there's another year going there. The central bank said that on Friday. That's helped Chinese stocks. But more generally, you have to say that the US-China relationship looks set to get worse. We're hearing reports out of the United States that they'll put more bans on an array, as they put it, of software companies which are controlled by the Chinese government. And of course, I keep reminding you that there is this election, of course, coming up in November, and President Trump, in the way of things, needs a political punch bag, and therefore China probably is quite convenient for that. I have to say that the ruling party in China has been relatively restrained about it, which brings us neatly onto TikTok and the Microsoft thing. This is an extraordinary story, and this is going to get bigger and bigger. What we're looking at here is Microsoft offering to buy a US operation of TikTok, which is owned by obviously by the Chinese. Now, first of all, President Trump said he didn't want it to happen. Now he's saying it can happen, but, and this is the big but, and this is the extraordinary thing about this, that he wants the US Treasury to have a cut of the deal as well. So this is moving into very, very difficult waters, I would suggest. And I've got a number of questions which I think investors should be asking about this deal. Never mind, for example, what's going to happen to Apple in China if this were to go through. But anyway, there's a deadline for this to September the 15th. So this is, I think, a complete battle for control. Let's do it. So how much, first of all, are TikTok's US operations actually worth? Very difficult to say. Can TikTok actually be carved out of its parent company, ByteDance? Could anyone else make a rival bid, for example, if Microsoft thinks it's a good idea? Now, Microsoft has an interesting presence in China. It's been there for, I think, about 27 or 28 years, and it's seen as the most trusted US tech company in China. So a lot of TikTok investors and a lot of ByteDance investors are thinking this might be quite a nice idea, that Microsoft would be seen as a white knight. Microsoft itself, what experience does it have in dealing directly with a retail audience? Not sure about that. So these are the kind of, and can it also reclaim some of the losses it's made on when it tried to have a digital advertising ecosystem before? It didn't work. Can it really do that? So there's loads of questions here about this, but make no mistake about this is going to be a huge story and will be another political football for the Trump administration to play with in the run-up to the election. Never mind the impact of what is happening in China at the moment, which, of course, we never really know because the ruling party there is quite opaque. On that, HSBC, this heavily Asia facing biggest bank by capitalization in Europe, after that pandemic profit shock that I told you about yesterday, it's now refusing to say, under questions, whether it would actually support any of its staff in Hong Kong if they take part in the pro-democracy movement. So that's a little story that may again develop. These are the dangers of being a multinational company. I mean, mercantile nations like yours and like ours know this very well. How on earth do you deal with differing administrations around the world? Having said all that, quite a bullish day yesterday for most stock markets. A particular beacon of light as far as UK investors was concerned is GlaxoSmithKline. It's already in talks, as you know, supplying its vaccine, which they're rushing to develop, its COVID-19 vaccine, by the end of the year. It's already in talks with the United States. That's more or less a done deal. Now they're going to be talking to the EC. Big question then, this is the other thing overlooking the markets, this stimulus package, which we've been talking about, it seems to me, for years. We haven't really, only about a week, but the trillion stimulus package. And no agreements in the United States at the moment. Some positive sounds coming out of Washington. How big will it be? We don't even know that. But politicians will have to start organising their backyards now to decide whether they're going to do this or not, because I don't see how they're going to go to voters in November not having decided, or at least shown their positions to say, actually, we didn't really like this deal. What will the voters think about that? They're concerned about their jobs, I would imagine, most of them. Global economy, sort of rebounding, really. We got a lot of manufacturing data between June and July from various countries. I won't give you the exact details of it, but generally speaking, not too bad. UK factory output, one of those, actually rose at its sharpest pace in 3 years. But here's the most important thing. Small and medium-sized enterprises with, like you, like us, the backbone of the economy, this is where the entrepreneurs are, and they are worried, very worried indeed about what's going on. So that's the real picture. We have the Japanese foreign minister coming to talk about post-Brexit trade deal between UK and Japan. I throw that into what may seem a domestic issue for you, but of course we were talking last week, weren't we, about greater ties between China, South Korea and Japan. So another trade bloc possibly developing there. And finally, finally, let's just do the commodities. Oil higher. Given the OPEC cut in May, and metals, mixed fortunes there really. Gold, once again, testing that 2,000 ounce level, but as we said yesterday, it soon came back. Copper, platinum and palladium posting gains. Silver slightly in the red. But the important thing about all these metals is that once they start to move, not so much gold, but the ones that are actually used in directly in manufacturing, once they start to move, then you can say to yourself, well, maybe things are getting underway again. Let's hope so. That's the global view.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Michael. I want to talk about Microsoft and TikTok. I'm always iffy anytime Microsoft buys stuff. I mean, look at LinkedIn. Microsoft have not been able to whip LinkedIn around. Look at even Skype. Look at the deal with Nokia, how it went. So when you look at all these deals, I'm always iffy, and I don't see Microsoft turning this TikTok youth market-based app around. And I think that's why the likes of Peter Thiel will always call Microsoft one of the Rust Belt of the tech sector, because it was just the old school software sales. That was how they made money, but not really the new innovation and the likes. They're doing well on cloud, but I don't see how they'll turn TikTok around.
Yeah, you're taking us back to the days of Big Blue again, aren't you? It's that sort of debate, isn't it? The similar kind of thing that pushed IBM, into. I mean, who's ever heard of IBM now? Given the way that laptops went and so on. Yes, I mean, I think in my report I was saying that the difficulty is going to be how do they actually cope with this retail-facing entity, which is TikTok. It's very fast-moving. You're absolutely right. Microsoft seems a very slow company. Relatively good at what it does. Let's not criticize them, but they've been around a very long time. And you do get the feeling that there's a different kind of motorway lane developing here, isn't there? That TikTok and so, I mean, I don't use it myself, obviously, I'm too old, but, kids use it. And it's a massive product. And it's going to give Microsoft, if they can do it, it'll give them a huge, it'll make them rival Twitter, as we were saying yesterday. And certainly, as far as TikTok's concerned, it would be good news for them to be exposed into the US market. But you're absolutely right. How will they actually hone their non-existent expertise in dealing with a retail audience? That's the key to it.
But Michael, beyond TikTok, who else is at risk? Yesterday I said India has banned about 10 Chinese apps. It's actually 59 as at yesterday. And the Chinese, they have about over 200 apps out there. Now, this concern about sovereignty, security, and privacy, what's going to happen next beyond TikTok? Because it's not just TikTok that is out there. Even Zoom is owned by the Chinese.
Yeah, I think these are questions which politicians will latch onto fairly quickly, just as they have with TikTok. And I think if you look at the global situation, not so much with Zoom, but just take it back to Huawei, for example. The complications of that have still not been resolved, and this will go on and on and on. This is internationalism. This is globalism. It's very, very difficult to deal with. I have no answers. I think we just have to see how it develops. In the end, I would hope that it's business that drives it rather than political concerns. But as HSBC is finding, in Hong Kong, you can't actually move away from those things, Doctor. You're absolutely right to have those kind of concerns. The landscape will change very rapidly and there will be winners and losers. That sounds very pat and pretty opaque, but I'm afraid that's the way it is at the moment. We have to take it on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you very much, Michael Wilson.
Indeed. Let's turn now to Aaron Akerjala, who has updates on COVID-19 pandemic. Good morning, Aaron. Are we close to finding a cure?
All right, it's been drawing quite a lot of controversy. It's good to see you, Doctor, from this side. Good morning to you, Rufai.
Great to have you.
All right, so let's get straight into it. First of all, the WHO's boss, talking about Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, yesterday in their weekly briefing, made a very emphatic statement. He said that there is no silver bullet for COVID-19, and we should take whatever is coming out with a bit, not in its holistically, but maybe a bit of pinch of salt, because it says that there might never be a perfect vaccine that will cure COVID-19. That's what he says in his own statement, and which is very emphatic because it comes on the heels of the fact that Russia have actually come out and said that they've actually they've actually come out with a vaccine, and they've actually manufactured a vaccine. Now, the Gamaleya Research Institute, which is part of the Ministry of Health in Russia, have said that we thought that they were in phase 1 initially, going by what I have been looking at, but from what it sounds right now, you can see the number of vaccines that are in the works right now. Over 165 vaccines are in the works in its totality around the world. All right, 18 are in phase 1, 12 are in phase 2, 6 are in phase 3, which is very clinical, and one of them have been approved for limited use here. But Russia has actually leapfrogged the entire step, and they are saying that at the moment that they do have a vaccine, which is quite worrisome, because Dr. Anthony, before we come into this, Dr. Anthony Fauci has been speaking and saying that we need to be cautious about what Russia is putting out there, understanding that there are people that they don't hold themselves to high accountability standards. Transparency is very low, and data about what is really going on in the research institute cannot really be deciphered. And these are people that probably manufacture vaccines without testing the efficacy of these vaccines on human beings. So we need to be very careful. What they are saying is that they actually created the vaccine through the adenovirus AD5 and AD26. So we're looking at this, and we're still keeping our fingers crossed to see how true it is. They're saying that they will soon be immunizing people or inoculating people very, very soon. All right, maybe in October. Let's see what becomes of that. But at the moment, the WHO are still very skeptical, because they released a list on Monday about the teams and those in phase 3 of the trials, and the Russians and the Gamaleya Institute did not feature in that particular list. So you look at that and you say to yourself, it's still in the air, but let's see how it goes. Since they said they will test it on Russians first, then let's see what becomes of that particular result from there, because they said that they've skipped several major trials to get to this point at the moment. Now, to try to help us break it down and maybe give a little context to what it is, now let's get back to the slide there. Now, all vaccines are not created the same. All vaccines are not the same. You can actually see there. Now, there's the viral vector vaccine, which are vaccines that actually deliver coronavirus genes into the cells and provoke immune response. All right, those that are actually going that same route, we've been talking about AstraZeneca's partnership with the University of Oxford. They are doing phase 2 trials, they're doing phase 3 trials, a combined phase trials at the moment, and they are claiming that there are a lot of similarities with what the Gamaleya Institute in Russia are actually doing. That their vaccine and that of that in Russia is almost identical. Question marks are still hovering around this particular vaccine. Initially, we thought they were in phase 1, and right now they are claiming that they are in human phases. They are testing it on soldiers voluntarily. As a matter of fact, Alexander Ginsberg, who is the head of that particular research institute, is claiming he has tested it on himself, and it actually does work. We know CanSino are in phase 2, and they've actually been approved for limited trial on also the military in China. Now, moving on to some others who have gone in advanced phases. Now, genetic vaccine, which is quite different from the former one we just spoke about. This time around, what they do is one or more coronavirus own genes are being put together to provoke an immune response. And that's the route that Moderna and the National Institute in America are actually going, and they're in phase 2. We know that, and they're looking very promising. They're saying sometime in September they will be able to have a vaccine for the entire, not for the entire world, but for some select Americans before the entire world. We also know that the German pharmaceutical Pfizer, who the Americans are heavily invested in, and also BioNTech are also in phase 2 and phase 3 combined phases. The Imperial College in London are also in phase 1 and phase 2 combined phases of this type of vaccine. This is how things stand at the moment. But when the Russians have spoken and they're saying that they do have an advanced testing being done and they're hoping by October they will have a vaccine, I'm a little bit confused.
Well, Aaron, I think what we can say comfortably is that, look, we're not where we were in March or in February with this a global scourge called COVID-19. A significant progress has been made by the scientists and also at the level of policy in some countries. I take Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus' comment to say that, look, we're still in a phase of uncertainty.
Yes, we are.
And that countries need to reset their approaches, and that scientists still need to do a lot more. In terms of the progress, I mean, the UK just announced that they came up with a test, 90 minutes test, which would facilitate, testing and tracing. I think that, that's a lot of progress. And if you look at the COVID-19 vaccine tracker, as you have pointed out, giving various examples, I think there is hope for humanity. But it's good to also have this wake-up call from WHO now and then. But my concern, and I keep saying it, many countries, in spite of the reservation that has been expressed by the WHO DG, are already on the pre-order list, particularly with regard to what is being done at Oxford by Sarah Gilbert and her team and AstraZeneca. Where are African countries? I will expect that Nigeria by now should also be on that pre-order list, because if there is a breakthrough, we will be able to get to the close to the top of the list.
About millions and millions of dollars. America is shelling out $600 million for the one with Pfizer, and shelling out another $500 million for the ones with the Sarah Gilbert's team. So. It takes a lot of money to be able to do that.
Okay, Aaron, real quickly. So to respond to you, Doctor, Mrs. Malete, the World Health Organization representative regional in Africa that sits in Brazzaville, was speaking this morning on television, and she was talking about the fact that African countries have started sourcing for funds to be able to get vaccines.
Well, we hope they will get those funds together and we'll be able to get on that list so that we will not be at the end of the list. Well, thank you very much, Aaron.